Thank you for joining us for the fifth session of this year's ETHNOGRAFEIN. I remind you that this year explores the theme of borders, boundaries revisited through anthropological perspectives and public engagement. Today we have a guest speaker from the Ilia State University in Tbilisi, Georgia. I'm very happy to say that we have established a collaboration through the Erasmus program with the Ilia State University since 2021. And Gurchiani is a professor of social anthropology. She's interested in the themes of domesticated and non-domesticated nature in the city, materiality, and religion. Also, she's looking into informal practices of resistance. She has involved in many research programs. I had the luck to follow one of them, City as an Urban Assemblage. She has published in various languages in journals. I mentioned some of the titles, for example, The Gallery of Ghosts, Death and Burial Lands Marked by Trauma and Material Religion. Also, one of her, I think, latest article with co-authored with Miriam Tarchiashvili, Nested Liminalities, Death Migration, and the pandemic of Georgians in Russia, and also Rivers Between Nature and Infrastructure and Religion in published in Central Asian Survey. Today, she's going to give us a presentation regarding a very interesting topic, everyday diplomacy and crossing boundaries, case of Georgia. So, Ketevan, we're very pleased to have you here. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Eleni, for the kind introduction and the invitation, and for this chance to revisit a topic that was very dear to me. I studied everyday religion for 3 years. The focus was on lived religion among youth. And my focus has been increasingly about looking at religiosity beyond binaries, not to look at secular, religious, lawful, lawless, or Christian, non-Christian, but to look on in-betweenness, on in-betweenness of coexistence and in-betweenness of rituals, etc. And to see how boundaries that are there are kind of become more porous and are there to be overcome. And this is also one of the topics that was important for your lab, and I thought it is a great venue now to revisit and also to update with more research that I conducted then over the years. This one paper that I want to present is about the baptismal practices in a multi-ethnic village in Georgia, and I will follow up with my current findings from a current project from Tbilisi. The paper that I will start today to present is about a village where, as we know, religion can have a complex role in creating or mitigating conflicts. And in many cases, it is also creating conflicts. But based on my ethnographic work in a multi-ethnic village in Georgia, I will show how everyday peace is continuously reaffirmed in the tradition to invite Muslim godparents to baptize Christian children. In local practices surrounding the Orthodox ritual of christening, Muslims can be recruited to the role of godparents, normally restricted to Christians, as you know, while at the same time they remain Muslim. The paper I wrote about it deals with the paradoxical question how a ritual, which is from an Orthodox theological perspective generally understood to demarcate and bound off Christians and from Muslims living together in a multi-ethnic village, can operate locally effectively paradoxically to become a unifying force. Drawing on classic semiotic analysis of the indexicality of ritual, in what follows, I will argue that the indexical contextualizations of this ritual, using shared codes of interpretation to provide for local practices of recruitment to participant roles, allow a ritual that from theological perspective reinforces and essentializes boundaries between religious communities to simultaneously be used for everyday diplomacy. The indexicality makes it possible to translate the performed religious ritual into a performance of peace and respect. Hence the paradox, a ritual that appears to do this kind of work of purification and separation, separating two essentialized domains of religious identity, can simultaneously do a hybrid mediating diplomatic work of translation, using the same ritual and local understandings to performatively produce indexical relations. The practices of peace, like religious practices, are context-bound. The mundane peace, as perceived and practiced by ordinary actors, is a complex phenomenon not confined to the strict boundaries of enmity or hostility. The borders between these two are fluid. This peace is not an existing structure, it's an ongoing achievement of everyday diplomacy, and I rely on Garfinkel and ethnomethodology. And everyday diplomacy is employed to prevail over possible conflicts. The everyday diplomacy entails withholding, not telling, cooperating, turning a blind eye, but also undeniable asymmetry, as Magnus Marsson and Alia wrote about in 2016. It necessitates acknowledgement of differences and also certain elasticity. In the current discussions on migration and multiculturalism, religion and identities are often seen as rigid phenomena, creating physical and imaginary walls. The small village of this study can be seen as a small-scale metaphor of the world with its migration waves, the dynamics of closure and openness, and with its asymmetries. Exploring this little example can hopefully show how practices and culturally shared codes can create buffer zones in which the dichotomies are silenced but not abolished. So in my case, I looked how rituals can be paradoxical, having a seemingly invariant structure, conventional structure across enactments, yet their meaning is always indexical, performative, and contextual. In this, I was inspired by the semiotic theory of performativity in the ritual established by Stanley Tambia. And so my point was to analyze how the ritual reproduces the existing world, how it acts upon the world, and most importantly, how the existing context shapes the ritual, namely its performativity. And how it happens that somebody how the pool of participants can be enlarged and what it does to the community. Now the context in which it happens. I would say that Caucasus, that is mostly often framed as a place of conflict, has this kind of overabundance of differences. The Caucasus is a place famous for intense social pluralism. It's a very interesting place to explore peace and conflict. In recent years, the focus has been mostly on conflicts, and it overshadowed the accounts of peaceful coexistence and diversity, which has been the fascination of the Caucasus for centuries. And I'm quoting here, of course, something that maybe was not true, but this is some of the images that Caucasus had. The ability to move freely across languages and cultures has been the most captivating feature of groups living in the Caucasus. Perhaps the most enduring mythic feature of the Caucasus is the way how its diversity is attended by diplomacy. Ancient historians remarked on the importance of the knowledge of languages and cultures for successful negotiations there. The emphasis here is about this possibility to negotiate, to transcend the boundaries. The peace as an achievement of communication shapes the view of the Caucasus in the Middle Ages too. Al-Masudi, an Arab traveler and geographer from the 10th century, called the Caucasus Jabal al-Alsun, Mountain of Tongues. Viewed from the macro perspective, in recent times, this diverse and fragmented Caucasus turned into demarcated groups. The ethnic homogenization increased in the 20th century and reached its peaks in the 90s with the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Still, the polyethnic world of the Caucasus continues to exist in the world of everyday encounters. There are numerous works on rural life, and they attend to different features. But in my case, it was interesting for me to see how in these very fragmented and very diverse places, these kind of border crossings are happening. And I always think that the theoretical potential of conflict is much higher than the number of actual conflicts, though it might seem differently when one looks at the accounts of all conflicts. One should consider also one important aspect of the situation of the context in Georgia, that which is the othering of Muslims. So Georgia is a predominantly Orthodox Christian country with a high minority, quite high minority, or the highest minority of Muslims, and especially Azeris, who are more than 6% of the population, and with Muslim population being more than 10% of Georgia, it is still seen as something deficient, as something lacking of being properly citizen of Georgia or being properly Georgian. And historiography shaped this view of Georgian history very much. And it has is also the spatial dimension. Places are mostly marked as places that were important in fight against Islam. And this is also the entrance to the village where we go to observe this practice of crossing the boundaries. Every encounter with the Islamic world throughout history is regarded as downfall and still shapes attitudes toward Muslim minorities in general. So it is very important to consider all this to see how this, despite the effect of othering of Muslims, still this crossing of boundaries happens. When traveling east from Tbilisi through mountains, one finds a village on both sides of the road. It is next to this fortress. At the foot of the village, there is one of the oldest Georgian fortresses with a gesture towards the standard Georgian historiography mentioned above. The inscription marks it as a fortress which stood there for centuries as a sign of resistance against the invasions of Persians, Arabs, Mongols, Iranians. As the road leading from the fortress to the village is one of the main connections to East Georgia, it defined the destiny of this place as a diverse place. It brought different people from east and west to the village. And as the road kept collapsing, it also encapsulated this diversity as an enclosed capsule of differences. The current settlement is a result of different migration waves. As you see here, one of the most important has been the Russian military garrison established in the 19th century, and then in 20th century, the labor migrants coming from either Iran or Azerbaijan should settle there because the policy of passportization, the Soviet policy of passportization didn't allow them to move freely between countries. So they had to settle there, and they were forced upon an identity of being Azeris, because everybody who was Muslim and lived there and whose identity was kind of strange, like his identity, they got this Azeri in passport. And in the 60s, another migration, this time eco migration, then changed the situation in this village, and it also became half Georgian and half Azeri or Lahij and Muslim. The Russian population left in the 90s, so the garrison not being effective anymore. The village Gombori is a place where the ambiguous effects of isolation can be observed. The location of the village, its place on an important road played a major role. The fact that there was a road and then there was none for quite some time because of landslides shaped the life in its village, opening up possibilities for the creative deployment of religious practices. The closing of the road secured the villagers from the strong religious revival after the 90s. Mostly isolated from the outside world, they remained like a tightly knit family, a beloved self-description. This is how they want to be seen, and this is how they are very proud to be seen as such. Two main religions are present there. It is Christianity and Islam. Religion is mostly tied to ethnicity. Azeris and Lahijis are Muslims, predominantly Shia. This belonging is more traditional. They do not really differentiate between Shia and Sunni and wouldn't know the difference. The differences and the encounters mark the space of the village. It has two cemeteries for Muslims and for Christians. It also remained demarcated during the Soviet atheism. Nevertheless, syncretic practices are visible. It has some places that are more important for Muslims, like this one residential house that has the status of being a special house. There is also a Russian Orthodox church that is increasingly institutionalized, but it was closed for quite some time. And during my ethnography in 2016-19, it was not a very vivid place. But what was very vivid was a church nearby in on a mountain. It's a church from the 10th century. It's a very interesting place because it is still a shared sacred space where Muslims and Christians go together and they have certain celebrations together. And most importantly, there is no Christian priest who is doing the services. So it could remain this kind of shared place. So but still there are a lot of differences one could see, but I will not go into many details how the space is split. What was very interesting for me, so this is one of the rituals that I observed in this old church. But what was important for me was this tradition of Christian baptism. So the people would always tell me, if you look at the religiosity in Georgia, why don't you look at our village? We are so great that we have this tradition, we have this Christian baptism in which Muslims are invited to be our godparents, because vice versa is happening throughout Georgia and throughout Caucasus, that Muslims invite Christians to be the pervas in circumcision. That it has another dimension. And in this case, Muslim women would telling me this is the only kind of sacred space in which we act as we have this kind of agency, because we go to the Christian space and become the godparents. And what it means to be a godparent and how they still remain Muslim, I will explain in short. The ritual of christening as performed in this village is a paradoxical religious practice where differences between groups are highlighted and ritually reconciled to a certain extent. To understand how it works, one should consider the theological meaning of the ritual and the contextual meaning of the christening. It has, of course, its constant meaning, and I will not explain it to you because it is the same as it will be in Greece. Yeah? It is godparent from the theological point of view is someone who bears witness to the child's baptism and is responsible for this spiritual upbringing. Yeah? In this ritual that is happening, the godparent becomes the medium through which the light is passed down to the child. And it has the same name in Georgia. It is Natlova. And with the word Nateli is the light, and this light is passed down. So someone who is the medium should be purified himself. Beyond this contextual, this theological meaning, the baptism has also contextual meaning, the social meaning, which is the important meaning for Church. This contextual meaning of the christening gives us clue about what exactly is performed here. Apart from its religious meaning, christening has a very high social value in Georgia. It's one of the most important events for families. The christening tradition places the godparent into the center of this practice. They are chosen carefully. It is a kind of honor if they tell you that you should become a godparent. It is acknowledgement of an existing relationship, but also invites to further deepening of the relationship, and it also overrides the blood kin. They become more closer relatives than the blood kin. Often people try to invite someone very respectable as a godparent. Such a request gives the final touch to the existing friendships. Often it is silently expected and self-evident considering one's social status and friendship. Future godparents should accept this responsibility. It is the common expectation that nobody refuses. Refusing would be kind of insulting. I believe that it will be same in Greece or elsewhere in the world. It's an honor which should be responded with an honor in a kind of mutual reciprocal exchange. The godparents will become like guardians to the children. But when little babies in Georgia talk up, there is a custom to clasp them on the back and say, look up, there is your godparent. It is kind of a guardian angel who should always protect and help. The important role of a godparent derives from her or his role as a channeling medium in the ritual and beyond the ritual. The christening is characterized by the openness to become the other. So you have to leave your space, you kind of become medium because the child cannot talk. So you talk on behalf of the child and you're this kind of medium. In Georgian culture, there is culturally important notion that emphasizes this interchangeability of this space replacement of standing in for someone, seeing, experiencing things from his or her standpoint. Virtually all the most common terms of endearment in Georgian are essentially statements of this reciprocity of perspectives and revolve around replacement. Genatsval is a term like this, which means I'm ready to be on your place. Or shenijirime also means your pain should be mine, etc. I believe this kind of replacement of perspectives when a mother calls her child mother or father calls her child, his child a father, is also quite common in Balkan world. I don't know how if it is something that is also used in Greek, but would be interesting. So it has this kind of the importance. The important role of a godparent derives from this channel, and it also is expected that a godparent gives their character markers to the child, their features to the child. So you're very proud when somebody chooses you. It is not something theological only, but this understanding that through medium, the child also becomes kind of like you, is an acknowledgement that this person also is open, that the child also has features of you. Um, After christening, godparents become closer to the family of the godchild and the bloodkin. And in this village, they would always say that they would never marry between families, though they have, according to Muslim tradition, they marry closer kin than Georgian Christians do. The baptismal kinship would be an exclusion for this. So what is also very important in this ritual of christening and how it can be also explained is the notion of khatri. The notion of khatri is to do something for others because you respect them. The notion of khatri is a key part of this local understanding of the reciprocity of perspectives. This concept, widely used in all Caucasus countries, requires a little unpacking. The notion of khatri is shared between Christians and Muslims living in the Caucasus alike. The word comes from khatir, and its original meaning is honor. The exact meaning is lost in contemporary use. It stands for denoting practices of acting out of the love or honor for somebody by adopting his or her view or his or her place temporarily. It is a short description of readiness for acting for somebody's sake, out of respect for somebody. Acting out of khatri at the same time implies certain essential boundary between self and the other, and the readiness for the flexibility, for the reciprocity of perspectives, for the possibility of being the other. It goes hand in hand with the essentialist understanding of the identity. I talk here about the identity as a category of practice, perceived and practiced by the people in the everyday life. Still, this particular essentiality implies certain flexibility. Often, theorization on perceived essentialist identities keeps scholars away from the understanding the complexity inherent to these understandings as well. Essentialist self-understandings are often regarded as more rigid, not prone to admitting the openness. Even if the identity is practiced and seen as something essential, it can still have a certain expectation of openness. The description of the ritual and the reflection of the participants will explain this in action. In one of the rituals, I'm sorry, I was checking the chat. I don't know how many minutes I spoke, but you tell me if it is too much. And in this, in one of the episodes that Murtaz, a Muslim guy, told me, he said that when the ritual was done, and in this ritual they have to ritually acknowledge to cross the boundary, either by nodding or saying some prayer, etc. And the priest has to turn blind eye. He has to give impression that he doesn't know that the godparent is Muslim, because they do it because of khatri. Somebody asked them to become godparent, they agreed, they will perform it. They have this elasticity and flexibility to be temporarily somebody else, to renounce their religion, but they do not really renounce. And in one of the episodes, the priest, when he heard the name of the godparent, he assumed that he was Azeri. And as the religion is tied to ethnicity, he said, no, this baptism doesn't count, because this guy is Muslim, apparently, and he should be Christian to be the perfect purification medium. And so the Murtaz, who is a Muslim guy, he told me I have 7 children baptized already, and nobody told me that. And a priest cannot really tell me now that I cannot baptize a child. And so then the parents of the child approached this guy and told him, no worries, you are godparent for us. It doesn't matter what the priest says, because the social function and also this most important or indictical function of this ritual is still done, and you will remain our parent. So this ritual involves this kind of diplomacy also from the priests, and institutional religion creates increasingly boundaries that are difficult to overcome. But if there is this cooperation between ritual practitioners and families who go there to baptize their children, it is still happening. But it is not without asymmetry. It is not an idealistic picture. It is happening and is important, but there is certain asymmetry that should be noticed. It is a performance with multiple actors and multiple meanings. Priests should play along godmother and godfather also should play along, and family of the child, but the researcher should also play along. I was very careful what to attend, what not to attend. I should not be the watchful eye there, and I should not ask too many questions. Sometimes the emphasis on asking if theologically it works would kind of ruin also the meaning of this ritual, would be too much curiosity. I should also look beyond binaries. Everybody in this situation is losing and gaining. So for the Muslim participant in this ritual, he is symbolically in this 5 minutes or so, for these 5 minutes, losing his own religion because he agrees formally, or because of this Khatri, agrees to be Christian. He's playing along, which means he's obeying. And this is kind of performative humiliation because the village has also this saying, so I will go to this length to also even have a Muslim as my godparent. But they also gain because they enter into another religion without losing their own. They maintain Islam, then they gain prestige. Over the years, they will have this special status. So when this Muslim guy told me I have 7 children baptized, it meant that he is very important in the village. I would know it exactly what he means. Not that he is special religious, but he's an important person. They are also compromising the chance to have a proper Georgian godfather and godmother. The Christian participants are also losing something. People tell them, now, your child is not really Christian or so, because it is not theologically working. Yeah, they are also playing along. They turn blind eye, and they are giving honor. But they are also gaining because they have somebody symbolically turned into their religion. They gain status across groups because baptismal parents are also important, and they are also getting honor because of this. But we also should see there is imbalance. There is this being pride in being chosen and having their own distinct language and religion, etc. But there's so much shame associated with being Muslim in public space and their language perceived as strange, etc. This is something that Georgians do not have as majority population. So we should keep in mind that this kind of imbalance is still there. Now, I will just take five more minutes for that, and then I'll answer your questions. When we go to Tbilisi, where there are these common shared yards, and where is this practice of conviviality is part of the everyday life, we see a lot of changes. We see how different things affect very much what is practiced there. So now this baptismal practice was also widespread in Tbilisi, but is increasingly disappearing because the watchful eye of the institutional religion very much shapes what they do and how they do. Now they have, for example, when they invite Jewish godparents to baptize Christian children, these Jewish godparents are there as they have a name for that, delegates. So they are attending the practice. So still, they are the practice, but in a different form. Very interestingly, and still is very dear and interesting for me, there are practices in which Armenian neighbors circumcise the Azeri boys. Um, in difference to the practice in the village, it is very gendered. It is happening only in the male domain. In this village, many female villagers were proud of, Muslim female villagers were proud of being chosen female godparents, but it is not done here. And increasingly, it is not happening between Orthodox Christian Georgians and Orthodox and Muslims, because the priests demarcate lines. They say what is proper and what is not proper. But there are other practices of boundary crossings, and it was very interesting for me to explore how the materiality of buildings helps in crossing boundaries, and what is the expectation of being good neighbor and how it shapes the everyday life. The expectation of a good neighbor in Tbilisi courtyards is to have open doors. This policy of open doors, never closing their doors, is also is proverbial, but it has also this kind of expectation of shared materiality. With increasing gentrification and selling out those buildings, this kind of porosity is also getting closed, but is still there. This is on the day when I was leaving Tbilisi now 2 days ago. You see that some people are creating some food together on a grill in this kind of village, but you also see that the space is mostly now occupied with either cars. It becomes a parking place, and there is also gentrification and migration happening that changes the situation. So buildings that we create also kind of act upon us. They have their affordances and constraints, and in some of the affordances that they can create the very porous relationships, while in others, but they cannot really change, more powerful actors and have their own limitations. I will stop here and give space for more questions and answers from the recent observations. I saw how different umbrellas became kind of refugee for different identities. For Armenians and Azeris in Tbilisi, it is the identity of being Tbilisian rather than belonging to an ethnic group. Also an identity of being half Muslim and half Christian. This is how an Azeri neighbor told me. Is also very important, and how they try to celebrate everything together as a celebration important for the neighborhoods. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Katie, for this very rich ethnographic account of a very complicated context. So I will open the floor for questions. Yes, Yanni.
Since I don't see anyone else, I mean, thank you, Katie. Very interesting. I'm not very familiar with this context in Caucasus. I mean, just only from readings that I have, and it's such a fascinating situation there. So I have a lot of questions. Let me just, for starters, and maybe I can then come back so that I give the floor to others. I was listening to you, and I was thinking very, very much, I mean, during your speech, similar situations in the Greek context that I have experienced I mean, not in that intensity, but also as a form of coexistence or between Muslims and Christians in what is, in Greece, apart from the official existence of a Muslim minority on the northeast, there are supposed to be not other Greek citizens who are Muslims. However, the case I had in mind comes from a small town in Western Greece at the Greek-Albanian border, Konica, where there have been living Muslim families that you can understand that they're Muslim maybe from the names, and then if you get to know their people, also from the cultural practices. Well, first I'm tempted to ask you, how did you, as a female researcher, I guess seen as a scientist, probably urban person, I don't know about your religious affiliation or whatever, just I would be interested in the experience of being there and trying to understand all these things. You touched upon certain things, so that's for the beginning. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. It is so fascinating that it's also happening in Greece. Maybe somebody also wrote about it. I just didn't know. So, but I will be happy to read if you have something about it. So it was, I didn't describe my methodology. It was part of the multi-sited ethnography. I was kind of invited to this village to explore this. And during the time of my research, none of the questionings happened, but I interviewed people and talked to people and visited them who were baptismal parents, both Muslim and female and male. So and they showed me pictures and they told me about their experiences, what shocked them, what did not, etc. I never encountered a problem being a female researcher in Georgia. You know, I think because professors are mostly female in Georgia somehow. Yeah, I studied in Germany. It surprised me so much that all my professors were male. And I said, oh, no, it's not the same here. What was I saw, of course, differences that I was urban person, and but I'm not religious person. They knew it because the questions I asked, etc. I think made it easier for them. Um, but this kind of there is also this bias. They wanted that I see the village in a very rosy colors as a perfect place. They wanted the things that are not proper, that I don't see them and don't see the differences and imbalances. I also struggled with the question if I should have put the name of the village, because it made them also target kind of for anthropologists. Now, quite a few anthropologists go there and do research, and they want to see if it is still happening. And every such question, if it is still happening, makes this practice more vulnerable, because then the priests ask themselves, because it works with this hidden turning eye that they don't know that was Muslim, etc. And now it is all, I don't know if it was good that I put the name of the village. On the one hand, the people were proud, wanted me to put it. On the other hand, there was this kind of danger. Yeah.
I would like to ask something. It was very interesting from the photo that you showed, the two churches, the Russian one and the Georgian one, the shared one.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to know more about the different statuses of the two churches and how the one that is more dilapidated, it is more practiced and more
Important.
integrated in the social life.
Yes, yes. It is a very good question, Ellen, because I wrote about it and then I had to put it out. It was too late. The Russian Orthodox Church is a church from the 19th century. And the other one is from the 10th century. Now, if you tell a Georgian, of course, everything that is old is more sacred. So they don't even ask this question, because this oldness is tied to being more important and to being more sacred. So everything is dilapidated. This is this romantic view, this quality of oldness, this quality of something being old and dilapidated has this a certain kind of feeling of something sacred should be there. Now, this very old church was not renovated till now. I don't know now, but I think it's not. And there was this kind of local practitioner, holy practitioner, who does this animal sacrifice. And people would go there when I was there, and they would bring a lamb. And this guy would, I have a lot of pictures of it, and he would say a prayer, which was kind of Christian prayer, but something good wishes. And then they would kill the lamb outside and bring one part of the lamb to the church building, which has very old frescoes. and is filled with child beds. This kind of small models of children's bedding, because it is also a fertility place. So people have the idea, if they bring this kind of, I don't know what the name for this cradle is. This is a kind of Georgian cradle. That if they bring these cradles there, and also bring this lamb and do this animal sacrifice, they will get children. So it is a multifunctional space. Everybody comes there to get children. Everybody comes there to have this kind of feast and celebration. And it is Christian, but moreover, it is also a place where the Queen Tamar, he was a famous female queen in the 12th century and 13th century, that she is kind of still vivid there. She has a room there. And just to, maybe it is an off topic now, but in one of the visits, I also saw how this male ritual practitioner was very busy, and a female labor migrant from Greece who returned to attend this celebration to Georgia. She was very powerful in her village, and people told her, "Now you are so powerful, you do so much for the village. No, why don't you say the prayer and take over from this guy? He has no time." And that was when I also witnessed it is a venue quite open for even for a female practitioner to become kind of ritual practitioner there spontaneously. So it is, and this Russian church is nearby, but people would go to the older Alaverdi church in the Kakheti region. And because the feeling is the older church, the more sacred you are, or the more holier the place. Is it same in Greece? I would assume,
It
not?
depends. It depends. For example, yes, old can be has the allure of old and sacred, but also there is this competition of renovate, because renovation shows off money and power. So
Yes,
it
yes.
depends. The other interesting stuff is what you said about hatri and
Mhm.
how it is used also in the Greek language.
Ah,
Hatir,
really?
yeah,
Good.
yeah. So
Good.
it's
So I
interesting.
didn't have to explain. This is good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting. So it would be also used by people to say if they do something unwillingly, but because they have space for others.
Yeah, or they try to show off that they are doing it unwilling film because of the other, because they
Because of
want
them.
to.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
The other thing that I would like to ask you, if there is no other question, is why do you use the term diplomacy and not negotiation in the title?
Um, no, one could all because I thought that negotiations are could be something in which nobody loses, and in
Mm,
diplomacy, or it is more business-like. Yeah,
mm,
it could have used, but in this everyday diplomacy, you have this kind of turning of blind eye, etc. That was
mm,
more, and I thought I was inspired at that time by Magnus Marston's notion of this everyday diplomacy. And he at the conference where I presented this paper, he was present there, and I started working with this notion. But I agree that almost everything there is replaceable. You could
mm,
use a different term, but maybe diplomacy has this kind of power imbalance too, more
mm,
than.
mm, mm. Okay. Do you have other questions? Yanni.
Well, I just dare to raise the hand because I don't yet see others. And so I take advantage of, right. Well, that was one of the questions I wanted to ask actually, about the cosmos of diplomacy. I'm not that familiar with this particular meaning of the concept. I was just, the question would be, why not boundary theory and border theory? But it's completely understandable and it makes sense, of course. Another thing I was wondering, well, listening again to everything, the context I understand, it's one where groups of every kind, ethnic groups or other groups, religious groups, in these contexts that you at least described, seem to somehow coexist and live together, right? So I was wondering, because one of the things that we are also very much discuss in our lab and many occasions is the public expression of a scientist's understanding of a situation within a broader political context. So when you are, if you had to, or if you do speak about these issues, more in the public sphere or even the academic context within the country. So what is the political stance and standpoints, regarding the coexistence of religious or ethnic or other groups?
Thank you for your question. I would be careful to talk about it to media or to write a blog about it, because because the Orthodox Church is very powerful, and they are for demarcation and for the tolerance. Tolerance meaning that they would tolerate if Muslims do it themselves, but our Christian rituals should be done properly. So I always refused and ask everybody not to do a TV something out of it. So I had several requests. In academia, at our university especially, there is this openness to discuss it. In the political, so our political situation is whoever is powerful, the governments try to align to them. And the trust into the church is number one institution in terms of trust, or not even not number one anymore, but second or so. And everything else has lower trust. So nobody will upset the church. So it will be hard to go on to say that we should go, or we should kind of give space for these hybrid practices. They would go for demarcation that everybody can develop themselves in their own sphere, etc. So, but not for this kind of colorful existence, I would say. And also in Tbilisi also, whenever fences are established or whenever new fences emerge, you see that in these more gentrified neighborhoods, there's now no space for this kind of encounters. When you see your neighbor every day and then you get so close that you invite them, now, why not you are my food parent or somebody? They would never go to church together, but still to have this kind of encounters, and it changes also. But maybe something else will emerge. I don't know. I'm not this kind of that everything was good in the past, etc. Just to understand what will emerge.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
If we don't have other questions, we can wrap it up here.
Yes, great. Yeah. Thank you so much for
Thank you very much, Katie, for having you here,
Thank
for
you. Thank
sharing
you.
this work with us.
Yes.
And
Thank
to see you again.
See you again. Yeah. I hope that you will also participate in our seminars again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And many thanks
Thank
to
you very
Thank
much.
you.
Anna and
Bye.
Penelope. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.